Welcome. My name is Heather from ShareBird, a site where top product marketing leaders share their expertise. I'm really excited for today's event. We have a fantastic panel on mastering storytelling. I want to share a couple of announcements before the panel gets started. First, the format for the event. The first half of the event will be questions from the moderator, and the second half will be live questions. There's a Q&A feature on Zoom, so go there to add your questions for the panel and be sure to upvote them, or be sure to add them right away so that others can upvote them. Second, our next Q&A panel is November 13th on earning roadmap influence. The panel for that event are the head of product marketing at Bill and the head of marketing for SaaS products at Stripe. We are currently working to confirm the third panelist. You can register for that event at the link in the chat, which I'll drop there in just a second. And with that said, I'd love to hand it over to Brianne and the panel to introduce themselves and get started.
Thanks, Heather, and welcome everyone. Thrilled to be here today on the topic of storytelling near and dear to my heart. We are going to kick it off with quick intros, as well as sharing more about our roles and what we enjoy doing outside of work. So for me, super passionate about democratizing access to information, expertise, and tools. This has followed me as a former management consultant to now marketer. I've built teams at LinkedIn, democratizing access to opportunities and to candidates at Nextdoor, providing access to information for neighbors and economic opportunity for small businesses. Past 2 years, been consulting at multitude of companies, SEMrush, Rippling, Dropbox, Upwork, democratizing access to tools and providing more value. Best career advice that I've received is to own your career. Sounds a little harsh, but I've truly valued it in terms of if your mentor or if your manager is not providing you the growth that you need, the learning that you need, go and get a mentor, be proactive on that to truly accelerate your career and be in the driving seat. And for me, what gives me joy outside of work, traveling. I have a goal to visit a new place in the US and a new place internationally every year. And with that, for our round of intros, I'll hand it over to John.
Hi, my name's John Rooney. I run product marketing at Box. I've run and built product marketing and industry marketing teams at a bunch of places, Splunk, New Relic, Oracle, was most recently at Unity. I started my career in consulting a long time ago as well. Spent a bunch of time at Microsoft. Bottom line, I'm old. I've been a lot of places. So.
And Kelsey, go ahead, share your intro.
Sure. I'm Kelsey. I lead the platform product marketing team at Wiz. I was very excited about this topic because I think storytelling is probably the only through line that kind of makes sense in my career. I actually started as a classroom teacher. I taught middle school. I then did startup PR for a few years, worked in an agency, and then have been in-house at a couple of different leading PMM teams at a few different places. So this is also very near and dear to my heart. I'm very excited for the conversation. I think I'll echo, Brianne, your career advice. Someone once told me, don't be shy about sharing what you're interested in or sharing what you're interested in learning. It's really hard. They called out, it's really hard to help you with your career if we don't know what you want to do next. So don't be shy about sharing or about asking questions and kind of owning your career. I'll fully echo. And outside of work, I've been reconnecting with old passions and trying new things. So I'm trying to do one reconnection and one new thing. So this year it's physical. I have started ice skating again, and I've also fully leaned into the pickleball situation. So moderate success on both fronts.
I love it. Reconnect and new, great themes there. And Sahil, take us home with your intro.
Thank you. Hey everyone, my name is Sahil Sethi. I'm based out of Seattle, Washington. I lead global product marketing for Freshworks. I've been around the block doing B2B product marketing for a while. I used to do this for Klaviyo. I was leading product marketing for Klaviyo, for BetterUp, for Qualtrics. Really excited about this. Storytelling is a topic that is very near to me because I believe we as PMMs carry many soft skills, influence, navigating ambiguity, but the one hard skill we carry is storytelling. To me, to be a great product marketer, call it messaging, call it storytelling, call it narrative creation. This is the one thing we all need to master. I've also written a book on product marketing. It's called Product Marketing Level Up. You can read it. It's actually about how do you improve your craft and career in product marketing, and storytelling is a big theme over there. Outside of work, I'm a big outdoors guy, and so hiking is my jam. You'll find me summer or winter in the Pacific Northwest trying to find a new trail. The best career advice someone gave me was you can be anything you want to be, which is another word for growth mindset. I feel like we all kind of box ourselves into I'm an analytical person, I'm a storyteller, I'm this versus that. In reality, we can always learn and grow into whatever we want to be, and we just need to get ourselves into the out of the box. Particularly in the world with AI, where we are marching towards, AI will do so much for you. We got to go back to the fundamentals and be very strong generalists, I think, and be very open-minded to where we want to be in our careers.
But thanks for sharing. As everyone can tell here, we have master storytellers on board, former teacher, author, former PM turned PMM. I'm excited to learn from all of you today. And to kick it off, Sahil, we'll have you lead with our first question, is sharing more about a storyteller you admire. What makes their storytelling so effective and memorable for you?
Yeah, I admire two, and neither of them are in B2B marketing, if it helps. I deeply admire Brené Brown, you know, for the simplicity with which she breaks down very complex ideas like vulnerability and shame and connect and make you connect with them. I don't know if any of you have seen Brené's first TED Talk, which started all of this, and she took like what is not an easy topic and uses the classic storytelling framework. Here is a problem, here's a tension with the problem, and here is the answer. I feel like I'm using her style in everyday life. I also deeply admire Malcolm Gladwell, and he is not following any of those styles. He goes deep into vivid details and writes really long sentences, but he captivates you. And I think what I'm learning from Malcolm in particular is sometimes details matter. We tend to oversimplify things, which is great, but there's some beauty to romancing your product, for example, and falling in love with it and describing it in the way he does, but connecting it all together in a story. Only he can do that. So those are the two storytellers I deeply admire.
Yeah. Love that. Both of those resonate, have read their works. And John, would love to hear you. Who's a storyteller you admire?
Yeah, I'm gonna go very topical. I'm gonna go with Brad Inglesby from my hometown. He is the writer and showrunner for Task, which just finished on HBO, if anyone saw it. Or he also did Mayor of Easttown a couple seasons ago. So not only is he from my hometown in Delaware County and outside of Philly, and gets all that stuff, but if you actually look at the structure of those shows, and they're the relatively short run prestige TV shows, the he does this really I think artful mapping of essentially, I mean, they're procedural TV shows, right? We've seen them for years and years. You're half asleep when you watch them on, they run the commercials during football games, like the CSIs, and like it's a cop show. They're essentially cop show narrative. So there's the sense of playing with the expectations of what you get in terms of tension and release in those television shows, and reveals and what characters know. But at the same time, you can tell he's not super interested in the sort of armature of those types of shows, and it really comes around much larger kind of humanistic ideas about not just character, but larger kind of philosophical, even like theological ideas. And I think that's a pretty cool thing to put into a TV shows with funny accents and dead bodies and stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Brad Inglesby from my hometown.
Yeah, I love the hometown shout out, and also just the diversity so far in terms of storytellers. It's like all different shapes and sizes and backgrounds. And Kelsey, would love to hear who's a memorable storyteller for you?
Yeah, I also was struggling to pick one. I had two that I was jumping back and forth between. One, this is funny. I was just chatting with someone. I recently joined Wiz, and so I've been getting to know my team a little more. And we share a passion for one of my team members, and I share a passion for Michael Crichton. If you're not familiar, he's the author of Jurassic Park, Congo, ER, a whole litany of other really wonderful books if you're ever interested. And I think one thing that he does so well is that he really balances having just a really plot-driven story, but giving it a lot of depth. And his books are known for having a lot of, especially scientific depth. He does a ton of homework to really, if you think about Jurassic Park, what the magic of that is absolutely the world that he built and the story of, the park itself and what's going on there, but he really brings it to life with the science behind it and brings that level of depth that makes you feel like you can really quickly understand and follow the story and really get into the science. And so I think that is just such a magic balance of that story and that expertise that he learns. And I just, of course, love the books. Timeline is my favorite, in case anyone was wondering. Recommend. The other person is actually someone I worked with at a previous company on social impact. And his name's Adam. He is just a master of emotional connection and really helping you see yourself or connect from a human standpoint with the work that's going on. And I feel like that's not, it's not easy to do well. It's easy to bring to life really powerful stories, but I think to really do it in a way that connects with you personally without being too far or without being overly cliche is just really, really impactful and really, really powerful. And it just really brings you along and kind of wanting to be a part of or joining the journey of a solution. And so he also, I think, is teaching now at UC Berkeley on work there. So you can check him out. He's amazing.
Right. All wonderful examples. And as one of our initial questions was, what brings you joy outside of work? I love how all these examples are not, to Sahil's point, B2B marketers that we see on a day-to-day basis. And so a reminder to get outside of our day-to-day to see incredible storytelling. And Kelsey, you calling out someone that you've worked with, folks who are listening to this, if someone that you've worked with in the past or someone you know is an incredible storyteller, reach out to them, tell them that, thank them for like the gift that they've given to you and others, because we're all surrounded by incredible storytellers. So to dive a little bit deeper into our day-to-day, taking these amazing storytellers we know, and we've all been there, you have this messaging hierarchy, right? And it's like, how do I take this to an amazing, relevant, transformative, compelling narrative? So, John, tell us your secret sauce.
Oh, I mean, I've unfortunately made the mistake multiple times in my career over the years of showing up with a messaging house or like a briefing document in with an executive review, not realizing that's just not the right format. It's kind of boring. Basically, once you have the messaging brief, go draft a blog post, go draft the website. That's the end of the day when there's like CEO or exec review, like when they think messaging, they don't think of like the nerdy frameworks that we love as PMMs. They're like, what does the website say? What does a blog post say? Maybe what does a press release say? And so yeah, that is I've learned that the hard way. I touched the hot stove. So that's, whether it's a fancy Figma file, you have a staging environment and you can, kind of stage the web stuff, but like have the website look as much like the website as possible, have a blog post be there as much as possible. And then if you've got time, have like a customer facing deck of like, and here's what sales would pitch. If you work like me and like a lot of folks here in B2B with enterprise, with kind of direct sales teams, but that's it. Yeah. Just, I think that's, kind of pragmatic and will keep you out of trouble.
Yeah, love that, John. I woke up at 5 a.m. today for our launch, and that's exactly what we did for this upcoming launch. The messaging was approved, we were all good, and we started to build the website, and that's when we really pressure tested it, and that led us to refine the messaging because it saw how it looked in real life, and we needed to make pivots. So bring it to life, show it in its form. Huge fan of the blog post, drafting that out to um, validate the messaging. Sahil, what's your thoughts?
I've got so many of them. My first is actually I so agree and resonate with what John said. There's a personal example I have. We were doing this strategic narrative repositioning work for Klaviyo many years ago, and we wrote this beautiful messaging framework, and it was a board presentation. And we did not bring the messaging framework to them. We actually showed them how these words, this narrative will show up in, we call it different aspects of the customer journey. And we said, this is how it shows up to prospects on the website or in a campaign. This is how it shows up on a billboard or in a customer-facing pitch deck. And that is how execs resonate with the story, and it landed really well. So think different form factors. A blog is one of them. But that was just validating what John said. I want to step back and say I think where most PMMs struggle with translating a messaging framework to a real story is we tend to give equal weighting to different aspects of the messaging framework. Because the messaging framework is a framework. There is the what, why, how. What problem do you solve? Why does it matter? Outcomes, value pillars. How does it work? Proof points. We feel like we have to give equal weighting to each one of them. And I've learned that depending on the company you are, the context you are at, or the where your audience is at, whether you're in category creation zone or in a red ocean market where you're out competing with others, you can choose to give disproportionate weighting to some areas. And so, for example, I found a lot of success in giving a lot of attention to the pain point. And whether it's an exec keynote or even a blog post, if you just go deep with emotionally connecting with the pain, not with the what do you do, not with the outcomes, not with the value statements, which all sound the same. I found a lot of success in that. I've also found a lot of success in going deep with examples because everybody is trying to solve for productivity or efficiency. If you are an AI agent company, there are 200 AI agents out there. Well, what do you do? Not the value, not the outcomes. And it's a counterintuitive take on things. It's the examples that matter. So I tend to anchor on two extremes, the pain point and the how, very deep, and feels like you can create a journey and create a good story out of it. But that's just a tip I've used. Also, to stand out, I think there's a question on everyone sounding the same. That's one way to stand out from the sea of sameness out there, is not just say we will improve productivity or efficiency or revenue, cost, risk, the same frameworks. It's really go deep with examples on how you do that.
Yeah. Love that. And I resonate with the pain points. It's solving for broader pain points, not pain points that your company created or needs to specifically solve for. That's too many times I've like, oh, this is a problem we've created, or like we're uniquely solving for. It's that broader macro element. And Kelsey, what's your approach?
Well, I am solving for efficiency. So I'm just kidding. I think I'll just add on to what John and Sahil have shared. I think seeing it in the wild is a really powerful way to get feedback and see what story's resonating. And so what John called out in terms of translating the framework and just start road testing it is invaluable. But I love with use cases, just to give some more tangible examples, because I also agree that's really where the richness comes from, right? If you can get everyone to agree that we're all aligned on the same problem. Now let's talk about some examples of how someone did this really effectively. This is where you can start to get creative and start to think about different ways to bring those stories to life. And so some ways I like to do this, I'll actually just do a Google search and just type in a keyword and see what image comes up. And sometimes you'll get bizarre images that you didn't think of when it came to this topic. And then you start to ask yourself, well, where did that story come from? What did that have to do? Is there some kind of analogy I want to make that brings this use case to life even more robustly or more richly, or maybe some connection I want to make that you wouldn't think of before. Another way I've done this in the past is actually, because I have a PR background, we used to talk about kind of the overall company story. How do we tell the story of especially launching a company out of stealth? And we talked about it actually as a story. Who is your champion? Like, who's your hero? What's their tool of choice that's going to help them save the day? What's the conflict that they're going on? What's going to be the resolution, and truly mapping it as a story. And I find that actually, now you start to go on, there's a context, right? What's happening in the world of this story? Where is your hero going down? And then you can bring that to life in different ways. And I'll give kind of a third example of this. We had a blog we were writing for launch at my last company, and it was, well intended. We took the messaging framework and we turned it into a launch blog, and it was solid. It was a good launch blog, but it kind of lacked that moment and that lacked that push. And so we took a step back and said, what story can we use here? And actually, the person writing on my team who was writing the blog, we turned it into his story. What was his story about how it would impact him? It's like, I have two small kids. If I was going couch, it was actually in the same space as Sahil was talking about with Klaviyo for shopping. If I'm going and I'm trying to find a new amazing e-commerce brand for a couch, like, you know what I'm not thinking about is running through 50 different couch stores because my two boys are not making it through that journey, right? And so you start to bring people along on this story, and the hero being your technology. And so I think those have been some fun ways to start to take these and put them into the wild in kind of compelling and fun ways.
Yeah. I love that aspect of actually like taking someone and it's like, what's your story, and bringing that to life to make it resonate. Um, and you alluded to this, Kelsey, about storytelling frameworks. Which ones do you use? An example also how you applied it to a product launch. I know you just mentioned this, Kelsey. Sahil, what's been your approach?
Sorry, my approach to a storytelling framework.
Yes, and how you brought it to life through a launch.
Yeah, I mean, oof. I think most storytelling frameworks have the same components. It's about the weighting of the components. You start with the pain of the human in the room. So, be emotional, talk to the person. You build some tension with the pain. That's an important part of the story. You talk about how you are solving for that tension, and you end with a payoff. So the linearity of the framework, in my opinion, is very similar everywhere. It's the relative weighting you give to different dimensions. So with the launch, for example, or in any conference keynote, for example, I'd like to begin with a personal story. I'd go deep and talk about moments in my life, career, professional, personal, otherwise, and see if I can link that and humanize myself first to connect with the human who's the listener of the story, and then we go into their pain points. That's a formula, if you may, that I use in my storytelling approaches. Some people try and adopt different types of hooks. For me, just starting with a very personal story helps. But if you're an executive, you meet customers every day and you talk about, hey, I met this customer yesterday and this is what he or she told me. So bringing those examples and relatability and peer insights is very, very powerful way to stand out as well. I generally tend not to go into, as I said, the value statements and the messaging pillars, because I think they are you have to say them, you give them some attention, that's important, but that's not the anchor of the story. And of course, every good story needs a hero. And so maybe shameless plug, but the book that I wrote is a collection of short stories about product marketing, and every story has a protagonist who's a product marketer, and you wouldn't be able to tell the story without a hero in the room. And again, so this is all about the attempt to humanize storytelling, and not necessarily give in to the temptation to, treat my messaging framework equally, because that's not what storytelling is about.
Yeah. I love how product marketers are the heroes and the thought of weighting things differently and not treating everything the same. Yeah, John, your thoughts on a framework you've used and example of a launch?
Yeah, no, I'm a big adherent to Andy Raskin's strategic narrative framework. Start with the problem of the world, et cetera, et cetera. That is my base template. So first call decks, and this is New Relic, Splunk, Unity, keynotes. I've done a gazillion keynotes. I try to start as much as possible with that framework. It evolves over time and it merges, and the larger the initiative, every keynote is a collaborative experience in and of itself, managing stakeholders. But yeah, I think, having spent some time places that were a little bit more kind of tech driven and inside out, I just thought, like, as soon as I read that, is that article's been around forever. Like, what is it? The best sales deck
Yeah.
I've ever, I think it was Quora. Was it originally what he used to decompose it? But yeah, I have that, and I like that's my security blanket, Andy Raskin. So thanks, Andy.
Yeah, I love it. And just to shout out, we have a Q&A coming up. We're going to open it up to questions from all of you. We want to hear what's top of mind. So please use the Q&A function to highlight questions you have. And what would be a Q&A without a question on AI? So would love to hear, we'll kick it off with you, Kelsey, specific ways you and your team are using AI in the storytelling process and where you're finding you actually need a human. We're not going to be replaced just quite yet.
Yeah. I think on the place where you can leverage, where we're leveraging AI today across teams, I use it in a few places. One, it's great for checking things or simplifying work, right? So if you have something where maybe you have a brand tone checker that you want to make sure, hey, I want to run this blog and make sure it's meeting all of my brand requirements, or help me simplify. I will tell you, for analyst relations, those little responses that have a certain number of characters, incredible. Put all of your answers in there. It'll simplify it and you'll get down to your right amount of, you may still have to tweak a little bit, but it'll help you enormously with that workflow. And then you should save them for later. Send them to your sales team, have them ping the analyst relations bot. But those are two places I've seen, so it's really helpful in sort of reviewing. It's also, we've used it for ideating sometimes. So, if I want to get to know, I don't know, it's a new persona that I want to start expanding into, start asking questions. What should I know about this person? Send me some links that I can read onwards. Then I can start to, okay, well, let's try to test out some different language or give me ideas for how I might talk about X. Where I think you're going to run into maybe a limit is a lot of it's around the examples that I think we've talked about earlier. Those really, I think, come more impactfully from a place where a human is starting to bring in the personality, to really bring in the connection. AI is an amplifier of people, but it isn't really taking the place of human connection. And so any place where you're really bringing that, trying to make that that emotional connection, I don't see AI doing that really effectively yet, but it can give you ideas for maybe where to start. So that's kind of how I'm using it today.
Love it. John, your thoughts on AI and storytelling?
Um, I think it's a helpful tool to kind of speed up the research phase. I don't use it for message development. I think that's the thing where you need to be a person. And in terms of like writing the message, but in terms of all the prep work and the research, I think that's where you get kind of gain the efficiency. I'll give a huge shout out to Gong. I don't know if anyone here's a Gong user. I've never used Gong before until I've always asked for it or ahead of the, wish it was other places. Box is the first place. And just like the built-in, like I want to know what's going on with the customer. Think about as a PMM, how do I find that information? I got to get invited to the call or I got to meet people, especially when you're new and ramping up on a business. Gong is the just the built-in Gong AI summary capabilities on an account basis is fantastic. But yeah, otherwise, I think it's a lot of that pre-work that I would do. You want to get market insights, and you pull in some of the market sizing, like all the stuff that you would imagine if this were a purely, you know, analog world and we're back in college, and like what are all the books and articles you put in a pile before you actually start doing your work. I think that was a pretty laborious process that if you've never done it before, like why does that take weeks and weeks? Like it really doesn't anymore like it used to. So that's kind of my looking on it. And then the other piece where I still think there's work to do is the kind of syndication of the message. So as PMMs, and sometimes it's better than others. I've seen it in my org where just like every subject matter for an email, every abstract for a webinar, like a PMM does not and should not have to write that over and over and over again. Like that's why we have a messaging brief. And so I'm looking forward to seeing more of that sort of propagation aspect of it, where like, hey, make sure it's an agent that is trained enough on brand voice, but like go read, have the agent look at the brief and then put your 25, 50 word blurbs everywhere.
We
Yeah.
actually created a PMM GPT at my last job where we fed
Yeah.
all of the messaging briefs and said, marketing, go forth. We can check things, but we trust you.
Yeah.
I love that, Kelsey. And I just sensed everyone nodding when John, you're mentioning like, how do we put the messaging out there and have it scale through AI and other places? So we're not, writing another tagline from that perspective. Before I go to Sahil, just one way that I've used AI from a narrative perspective was leading a customer advisory board. We were bringing our top customers in for 2 days, and we had some hard news to deliver. Like they asked for all this stuff last year, and we weren't delivering on it. And the big piece is we were redoing our tech stack, so we had to really the theme was slow down to speed up. So in order to do everything that they wanted to do, we needed to slow down and redo the tech stack. And I was trying to look for a parallel out there. Like what else slows down to speed up? And you know, ChatGPT to the rescue had a great example of Formula One. Formula One, they need their pit stop. They can't keep going and going and going. They need to stop, they need to refuel, they need to get the new tires on in order to continue to excel and go fast. So in presenting this news, which we thought was, pretty tough to our top customers, being able to tell that story and bring them along through an example really resonated with them in term versus like tech debt, which doesn't resonate as much, but they definitely understand the reason that Formula One needs to slow down to speed up. So that's how I've used AI from that perspective, but always gut check and make sure it's going to resonate with your audience. Just don't take it as face value. Sahil, your thoughts?
Firstly, I love that example. I wish I had that story a year ago when we were hosting our cab, and the primary message was we are retiring our tech debt over the next year. We actually go into our cab in 3 weeks from now, and we're giving them the good news. We are speeding up.
Yeah.
I wish I had that story with me. No, I think I have two parts to the answer. The first is the mechanical part, and the second is the actual, like what we are doing. The mechanical part is very similar to what Kelsey and John and others have been doing. We've actually built a custom GPT for product marketing. It's on ChatGPT. We've fed it our messaging docs, our source code, the web pages we like, the sales collateral we think like we like, and it's driving a ton of not just productivity and efficiency, but just quality gains in how we storytell and how we communicate, not just for us, but for the rest of marketing. The term I'd like to use is we are raising the floor and raising the ceiling with AI on how we storytell, because messaging consistency and messaging resonance is a big part of product marketing as well. It's not enough to create a good message. It's really important that it lands everywhere consistently and resonates with the buyers. And it starts with the rest of your company. So a custom GPT helps you in that. But that's the mechanical answer. I think I personally have had a breakthrough in how I use AI over the last 3 to 4 months because, I was using it for all these use cases that one would normally think. It's doing my grammar checks, it's helping me ideate ideas, it's creating good first drafts. I'm mining call scripts and using it for research. I've started to use AI personally, frankly, as a coach and a almost like a chief of staff, who I would I would rely on for a lot of depth answers where I retain the right to make the final decision in the end. So we recently used AI to actually build a maturity model for our products, and it gave a pretty darn good draft with some back and forth, but we took it to the last mile, and because we know our products really well. And so I've learned to converse with it as if I'm conversing with a true chief of staff, a true confidant who's a subject matter expert in who we are and what we do. And I think it's been a bit of an inflection point in how we use it. And we're seeing a lot more good quality usage of AI coming out of this. If I was doing this 3 months ago, I wouldn't have said that. So this has been a journey as well. But yes, we do retain the final nuanced answer, which we share with the org or with the world. But AI has gone beyond just ideation for us or draft writing for us. It's actually become like a really powerful PMM, storyteller, subject matter expert on your side that the entire team has access to. And we use it to bounce ideas without judgment, ask it to correct our ideas and find gaps in our stories without judgment again. And I don't forget to say please and thank you to AI. In the world that
Yeah.
Cybernet or Skyline Systems comes alive, they know that I said please and thank you. Don't forget that. That's my pro tip over here.
Yeah. To that point, beyond please and thank you, what are some of the prompts that you've seen that are most effective?
Yeah, so a few prompts that I use is pretend you are XYZ. And sometimes I've used pretend you are April Dunford because I
Yeah.
like to see her style of storytelling. I've also used Andy Raskin. Sometimes I see pretend you are my CEO or my CPO, and I could see the differences in the voice. So giving it character and personality is really important. Sometimes it could be pretend you are the best PMM out there who likes doing strategy and, strategic narrative and category creation. The other sort of extreme example of a prompt I've used often is like find holes in my messaging today. Or what would you change differently about what I just said? Or give me 3 reasons why this would fail. Kind of like Amazon's model of like in every PR FAQ, they write, why would this fail? Tell me why this is bad. And it's a really good sanity check. Once again, without judgment, it's easier to hear from AI than from your manager sometimes. Uh, but those are two examples of prompts that we've begun to use.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I feel like the prompt sharing is real. Um, and now that we've touched AI, a lot of folks are here. They want to become better at storytelling or help people on their team become better at storytelling. What's a practice or exercise you recommend to product marketers who want to become better storytellers? And John, do you want to kick us off? And while John's about to kick it off, please continue to add questions, upvote the ones that you want to hear, because we'll soon be turning it over to the Q&A from the audience. Go ahead, John. Oh, you're on mute, John.
Sorry, it's not a particularly clever answer. Read. I think that's the thing, and try and read as much as possible. Um, you know, uh, try not to read too much business. You know, that's how we all end up using the word elevate and supercharging things when we're not actually in a rockabilly band. Like it feels like try to read as much good stuff as possible. A hack that I've actually, been thinking a lot, because at the end of the day, you want to get people excited about things that they, in abstraction. So start looking at cultural criticism as a way, I don't know if anyone read Quentin Tarantino's cinema speculation book, but like maybe you're someone who's never seen Taxi Driver, maybe you're somebody who's never seen Rolling Thunder, and to read his enthusiasm, the idea of like, can he convey, the relatively short essays, the excitement, like to get you excited about a thing that is, it's not in front of you. You're not watching Taxi Driver, you're reading a book, which in a way is kind of an extreme of what we're doing, whether it's a pitch deck or web copy or whatever, wherever our messaging lives. Another big recommendation, somebody that I really liked, again, kind of cultural criticism. Um, there's a music writer named Jessica Hopper who has an amazing book. It's called The First Collection of Criticism by a Living Female Rock Critic. And like there are a bunch of short essays, and the thing that I think it checks you against, especially something you're not that interested about. I mean, I imagine like we all work on cool stuff, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, if I'm going to read an essay, like maybe I don't know very much about Kendrick Lamar. I'm going to read about it. Maybe I don't know about Dinosaur Jr. Maybe like, and I think that to have somebody who is a trained writer, who's read a lot, and convey something as simple as like in very direct but also exciting prose that doesn't get too far off into kind of literature and being highly personalized. And sure, the Joseph Campbell's and the hero journey stuff is really great too. But I think the idea of like if I can read an article or an essay about a book or a movie that I don't know nothing about, and I want to go see or listen to that, I think that's effective. And it's, I think it's a little hack for me.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. A good reminder to get out of our day to day. Kelsey, your advice to become a better storyteller?
I think the most important thing for me is putting yourself in the shoes of your audience. I don't know if you've many websites I've been to where you're not exactly sure what what they're offering, right? Or you've been in a talk where you got an alert on your phone and you look up and you've lost the plot, or it just isn't, there's a lot going on. And I think we get very excited as product marketers to share tons of depth about our product or all these learnings that we have. But as an audience member, how are we able to scaffold this story in a way that it's structured and it's easy for me to follow, or that it's really, I think we sometimes forget to have fun in some of these things. Like I pretend you're an audience member. Would you want to listen to this talk? Would you want to read this blog? What about it is you can make anything, really. That's part of our power. That's our superpower. We can make anything compelling and connect with it. And I think I wouldn't be shy about bringing in things that you enjoy. I think, Sahil, you talked about this earlier, making a human connection. Don't be shy about being authentic to yourself and making that come through, because if you're on the other side of the table, what's going to make it jump out to you? If it's not interesting to you, I would challenge you and have you ask the question, is this going to be interesting to my audience?
Yeah. And Sahil, your thought on strengthening that storytelling muscle?
Oh, so many great examples here. I actually so believe in what John said, just read. Everything I am professionally is from the books that I've read, and I'm a big reader, and so I've a collection of books I admire for the storytelling style. Some of them are cultural icons, and some of them are, just even good old business and management and leadership books. There are some out there that are written with a very storytelling bent to it. So go read and read a lot, read diverse perspectives, because you don't have to copy one's style, but you have to identify your style. And sometimes you discover that by reading. So I'm a big fan of that. I also have a 10-year-old boy who is very high on vocab and has reached a point where he asks me to explain things. And he's forcing me to be a better storyteller by dumbing down things. And this comes back to, how do you explain this to your kid, or how do you explain this to your grandma? I used to laugh at these questions because you're never actually selling to your grandma or your kid. But seriously, now that I have to explain very complex concepts in life to my 10-year-old, I think I'm maybe becoming a little bit better storyteller as a result of that.
Love it. So grab a 10-year-old and tell the story. I've heard a great phrase of I want to make sure I use AI to become smarter and not dumber. And so I love, Sahil, how you're learning into that challenge for yourself of like, how do I simplify this versus like, okay, let me see what ChatGPT says about this one. So continuing to ensure that we strengthen that muscle. Thanks for all the great questions from the audience. Continue to add those in there. The first one we'll kick off with is and I love it. It's like lessons learned. We always talk about these things like things are so easy. Oh, we just created this narrative and the storytelling and it worked and everyone loved it. And then there's the reality where sometimes it doesn't work out so well. So, when's a time that storytelling didn't work out the way that you wanted to, whether it missed the mark or something else, and what you learned from it? And Kelsey, we'll start off with you.
I'm sure we all have lots of fun examples of this. I think at the start of my PMM career, so my chapters, again, I was a classroom teacher and then I went into PR. And when I went into PMM, I was like, okay, I must be technical. There must be much depth here. I must explain all the value, all the efficiency. And I think in this effort to really try to meet the bar of what great PMM is, I think I lost the moment of what does it mean for my customer and and that the humanity of the work that we do. And it's whether you're selling to IT, to security, to marketing, I think many of us are selling to B2B, or even a consumer brand, right? There's a person on the other end of this message and remembering who they are. And so, yeah, my first cuts at pitch decks, my manager was very kind and gave some feedback and said, let's try this again. Let's go talk to some customers. Like John called out, it's certainly a lot easier now to do market research at scale, but there's nothing, what are the words they're using? Because it was not what I was using. And I'll tell you those first couple of pitch decks. So I'll pause there.
Yeah. What about your lesson learned, John?
Actually, mine's pretty recent, and I think it's pretty relevant to what we're talking about here. I mean, if everybody remembers the beginning of, I guess it was 2023, where everyone was starting to have their generative AI moment, I was at Unity, and we were announcing and talking about capabilities, new capabilities in the platform, maybe some that were a little bit further out envisioning. And just even within that year, if you look at 2023, and if you remember, there was the writer's strike in Hollywood. There was really some real downward pressure on hiring in the games development community. The game developers in general started, I think, really push back on AI as being a good thing. I think that there are pockets, again, to Kelsey's point of like, who are you talking to at the end of the day? Like, who are these people and what do they care about? And there are folks in creative roles, there are folks in entertainment, there are, and in a lot of ways, I think I learned in my time at Unity, game development is a little closer to entertainment in terms of the persona or at least the mindset than enterprise software development, which is really where I came from. And so there was we could almost feel the shift through the year as we kind of led with AI. The game development community is will let you know they're outspoken. Not everybody wanted to hear that, and I think as a leader of product marketing, I probably should have anticipated and tampered some of that down faster than I did. And that was definitely one where like we got kind of caught up in stuff and we forgot like, wait, who's the customer and how are they thinking about their lives and their livelihood and their creativity and what, and that difference. So it's a tough one, but yeah, that's very recent.
Yeah, thanks for sharing sincere humility there. Sahil, your learnings.
Yeah, I mean, I have a very recent example where I did everything I just practiced not to do. We are in the middle of refreshing our messaging for one of our hero products. And before we could test it with customers, we got the opportunity to test it with analysts. And analysts have a way to make you speak a lot of vendor speak. And so I found myself using words like purpose-built and AI native and agentic and unified. And it went a long way before we caught it and are trying to dial back into a little bit more human-centric terms. And that's a very recent example. We had to eat crow because I just said you should be able to, use human-sounding terms, even for your value pillars, but we ended up sounding just like everyone else. And I feel the lesson here is, sometimes you hear what you want to hear, or sometimes you create terms to please the person rather than be true to who you are. And some of us felt like, hey, analysts would like to talk about or hear about your differentiators as purpose-built, for example. We were forgetting that an analyst is also a human, and just because they write these technical language doesn't mean that that's what will resonate with them. And what you're really solving for is a customer. You're not all of these other constituents. You can create derivatives for them, but don't create a primary messaging for them and create a derivative for your customer. So I always go back to test it with customers, play it with customers. There's so many ways to message test things. Words matter. It's not just the description, it's the tagline matters, the hero headline matter, the what you call your messaging pillar matters, because you want your entire organization to use them as source code. It's not just enough for you to say it. You want everybody in your company and the spokespeople in your company to say it. So every single syllable matters. And that's the lesson I learned.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I also appreciate the humbleness of people sharing recent examples, and in the spirit of growth mindset, role on this journey, continuing to learn and grow. So value that. And the openness, I think that's one of the values of Sharebird, is that openness of learning. And I always say it's sometimes the things you can't find on LinkedIn that we don't post about. So another question from the audience: how do you think about messaging and the narrative and the storytelling that you may put on a company's webpage when you target multiple buyers or customer segments? That scale versus personalization piece from a storytelling lens. Anyone want to jump in first? Good. John, I saw you on mute. Go ahead.
Sure, yeah, and I've kind of run into this a bunch of times. I mean, luckily now the technology started to catch up, and there is personalization where they can check, oh, you come from financial services, or you come from healthcare, or even some cases you come from this region, so you can sort of serve up a different version of the site, and even how the language is baked and what use cases you highlight. It's definitely difficult, right? I think there is an altitude. And sometimes you have it's like this sort of like in talking to in attempting to speak to everybody, you speak to nobody. And so that's why I think as much as possible, and there will always be balanced out by concerns with, are we talking to the street? Are we talking to financial analysts? Are we talking to our customers? Are we talking to end users? Are we talking to the economic buyer? I think having as much specificity of that as possible. But if you ever feel like, hey, this is all things to everybody, catch yourself, because that never works with kind of anything. And I think it's just a lot of this stuff you have to kind of make trade-offs. But luckily, the tech is starting to bail us out, and you're having there's much more personalization. And who knows, maybe with AEO we'll get completely bailed out, so because people won't be coming to our websites anyway. It'll just be having the LLM serving back whatever content we structure for them. So yeah, but that is an eternal problem. So whoever's facing it, I wish you best of luck.
Yeah, I appreciate your perspective. And I hear in the back of my mind Sahil's prompts, like putting messaging or story in and being like, who does this resonate with? And if it says everyone, that's a catch. Or if it says someone different than your target audience, that's a catch. So really, using AI and other tools to pressure test, like who would this resonate with, to truly understand your nailing. I'm a huge fan also of understanding who your priority audiences are, in the spirit of, John, you can't market to everyone. So who should you be focused on here? Kelsey, do you want to share your thoughts on that balance?
I think John captured it pretty well. I think there's lots of opportunity. The tech is catching up, which is helping us differentiate. I'd also challenge the question. I think a lot of PMM's job is to prioritize. And so I'll just echo if it's for everyone, it's really for no one. And part of our job is encouraging what is the hierarchy? Who are we trying to make sure we're reaching, and when? And so maybe the value proposition is that we bring together two audiences. Then it's really important we try to get both persona captured on here. But that, I think that would be just the piece I'd add to what John called out, is really scrutinizing priorities and what's most important for us to reach on our homepage.
Yeah, thanks for that. Sahil?
Yeah, everything that Kelsey and John have said, I absolutely second. What I'll add to that is sometimes we forget to ask a question: what is the primary purpose of our homepage? Is it a storytelling device? Is it an education device? Is it a conversion device? Sometimes it's all of the above, but that's the prioritization I'm looking at. If you're in a PLG centric motion, you may not realize, but if you try and tell too many product stories for your new fledgling incubation products and take away the primary, lead magnet that your homepage is for your primary product, you will actually suffer. But if you're an enterprise sales company where the homepage is not about getting leads and signing up a trial, but it's actually telling a transformation story, it's okay to talk about a melded story of multiple things if you can pull it off. I'll actually share a very personal story again from Klaviyo. We were actually trying to position Klaviyo as a very horizontal platform away from the email marketing tool it had become. And that sounded amazing for investors, and that sounded amazing for um, a real enterprise customer with whom you can share a vision of where we are going. When we tried to bring that on a website, we basically tanked our classic email marketing perception PLG flow because we were trying to show all these other products that we are building or about to get into. And that's a failure we learned. And so knowing the purpose of your homepage is very, very, very important. But yes, there are so many ways, there are so many devices between personalization tools like Mutiny or just having a very smart navigation to let the users self-select themselves. But the question I always encourage everyone to ask, it's a CMO question actually, not just a product marketing question, is what's the purpose of your homepage? Rather, what's the purpose of the first one third of your homepage? Are you looking for people to get into a trial? Are you looking to educate them? Is there a journey you want them to take? And it's a very hard question that not many people can answer.
Yeah, I appreciate it's amazing how back to basics drives so much clarity. We're going to wrap it up with last question here. We'll do a speed round. And so with that, with all the noise out there, with all the AI out there, with company.ai, SaaS this, enterprise this, faster, better, smarter, how do you craft a differentiated story? Anyone?
Yeah,
John, do you want to kick it off?
just be super specific. I think, we maybe were talking about some techniques earlier. Like, I'm a big fan of the barbecue test, which is, what do you do? You transform things for a living and you turn some things into insights. Like, I've already blacked out. Like, like that means nothing to anybody. And so hopefully we all have friends and family in our lives who are not in our industries or not inundated with these things, and explain it to them. And so I think that's what's been the most effective thing. And some of the companies that I've been a part of that have been most successful have been like, we solve these problems for these customers in these ways. And that's all they care about. Remember, it's like the old adage, nobody cares about your shovel. They just want a hole in the ground. Talk about the hole in the ground. Your shovel will come.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. Sahil?
Uh, I will say be specific because primarily, I think if I just step back, AI is creating more content, and all content is basically centered around value and outcomes because we as PMMs were told to do that. No, nothing wrong in that. Don't do feature speeds and feeds, talk about the value. The challenge is everyone is talking about better, faster, stronger. It's efficiency, it's
Yeah,
productivity, it's revenue, cost, risk, and we are forget in the spirit of communicating value, we are forgetting the how. And there's no shame in going back to the how. And I'm not saying speeds and
yeah,
feeds, but it's like the hero features or the hero capabilities or the hero use cases that make you truly stand apart and unique. And if you don't have them, then frankly, you're not differentiated. And that is also a challenge I
yeah,
see with a lot of companies is they're trying to find differentiation when there isn't any. And sometimes you're hunting for inauthentic words to say, which may backfire eventually. But if you have something, even if it's like a certain ICP, a certain pain point, and you solve that in the most unique manner, just celebrate that, romance that. John, just like you, I started my career at Microsoft. As PMMs, we were told certain principles of good storytelling. One of that was romance the product. Like just romance the product. Don't be hesitant in like calling out what really, really works and is differentiated. And that could be one tiny thing at the expense of the breadth, and that's okay.
yeah. All right, Kelsey, bring us home.
I mean, I was going to also echo specificity. I'll give you an example though of what this has looked like. I spent many years at Okta, and then I went, which is in IT, security, right, identity and access management, and then I went to Braze, which is in sales to marketing folks. And I walked in on day one at Braze, and they had the exact same value pillars that we sold and the same framework that we used at Okta, right? It was driving better productivity, reducing risk, increasing revenue. Right? It was I like have it print out here next to me. It's the exact same thing. Everyone is we all have to acknowledge we're all saying because that's what boards care about. But to what John and Sahil just called out, it's how you do it that matters, and being specific about how you do it and why the outcomes that your customers see are why it's improving their outcomes. That's the secret sauce. We're all under the same umbrella. It's the details. Those are what really matters. I have yet to see this yet at my current company, but I'm only 3 weeks in, so stay tuned.
Love it. Well, thank you all to these world-class storytellers. I'll share a couple takeaways that resonated with me. One is to leverage our product marketing skill set of really understanding the customer and being that voice of customer to bring forward those pain points, which is sometimes the beginning of that arc of storytelling, and leaning into that. The second is that stories are everywhere, and mostly outside of our work life. So read, watch those movies, listen to those podcasts, pay attention to those incredible stories that surround us every day. And then the last is to bring it to life. Get that messaging off that PowerPoint slide or that Google slide and put it on the website, write that blog post, go to a barbecue, test it out. I'm going to steal the barbecue test, John, and see how it resonates and see how it really brings to life. So excited for everyone here to bring this knowledge forward, to tell incredible stories, to inspire, create value, and drive more impact in our day to day. And with that, I'll turn it over to Heather.
Thank you to our panel and our moderator. We work hard to curate the best product marketing mentors for you to learn from, including the people on this panel. When you're ready for your next job, I recommend looking for jobs on their teams. If you had a question that wasn't answered, you can search thousands of answers on sharebird.com or ask it on an upcoming Sharebird AMA. As a reminder, our next event is on November 13th on Earning Roadmap Influence. You can register for that event at the link in the chat. Lastly, if you have any questions or feedback for us, please email us at events@sharebird.com. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.